morning, folks, and welcome back to What It Does Settle. My name is Nico Conway, and today we're going to be discussing a very important case. And as we started last week, we said we'll be discussing cases as relates to things that happen within correctional institutions across the country, and we'll discuss cases so that correctional officers can read those cases and be able to make their own decisions when it comes to, not make their own decision, but be able to make the best decision given the situation that they find themselves in. And today we're going to be discussing Turner versus Safley. That case is 482 U.S. 78. And this case happened in 1987 in Moussiri. But before we can come to that, let's talk a little bit about the prison escape that happened in Louisiana. You know, as correctional officers, we make the headlines only when things go bad. And I think that why it's very important and appropriate that correctional officers know the rules, know the policies, and make sure you can follow. And when you're doing something, make sure you do it with a huge amount of dedication so that you will not make mistakes or do things that will bring about legal actions against you or against your institution. You know, it's unfortunate that 10 inmates escaped, and I think they said they captured 7 of them, 5 of them, whatsoever the case is. My own thing here is, you know, correctional officer, we just got to be very careful whenever we are doing things. Last week we discussed in our 4th episode, we discussed about the use of force. And today we're going to talk about regulations, you know, how regulations are made, what are some of the things that the courts will look at when regulations are made. And for ourselves too, you know, as correctional officers, we have to be aware of the fact that when these policies, the rules are made, you got to read them. Like when I work, and I know most institutions are the same way. These policies are posted, and there's a place there that you got to confirm that that you read the policy, understand the policy. That is done for my own understanding. That is done so that in case there is any issue, you know, you can't say that I didn't know about the policy, and no, you're going to be here responsible. My own problem with having all of these policies online, or having it in a hard copy, though, in a booklet form, is it doesn't give officers in my institution in particular. I don't know why it happens. Almost all the policies are online. I think they need to make it in a booklet form, you know, in a printable form like this, you know, so that officers can be able to read these things and be able to keep themselves abreast about activities. So this case we're going to talk about regulations. Regulations are made by prison officials every time to ensure the smooth functioning of the institutions, of their various institutions. So in this particular case, in Moussiri, the institution formulated 2 policies or regulations. One of the regulations has to do with marriage, all right? And the other regulations, the other regulation had to do with correspondence between inmates. So these 2 regulations that were made, the inmates challenged the regulation. The marriage regulation, let's talk about the marriage regulation first. The marriage regulation that was formulated in Moussiri, the regulation was as such that inmates could only get married only when the superintendent approved the marriage, and you got to be either for a birth of a child or pregnancy. That was one of the regulations that the inmates challenged. Safley and the other inmates, that was a class action lawsuit that they brought. They brought 2. warn against the marriage regulation, as I stated, that the warning has to approve the marriage before marriage whatsoever agreed, whatsoever before the inmates can get married. And the second regulation that was formulated by Moussiri prison system was corresponding regulation. Corresponding regulation. Corresponding. That's corresponding. That is it's going to be D and C. Corresponding regulation. Okay. That regulation was put in place by the institution to avoid inmates from different prisons within different facilities within Moussiri from communicating with one another. So you have somebody like where I work, maybe you have somebody involved, you have another person B WCI, you have somebody at How Young, you have somebody at Plumber Center. These inmates could not correspond with one another. So though the inmates challenged the two regulations. They challenged the two regulations in court. And the court decided the two regulations. One of the regulations was upheld. And I guess you know which one was upheld. Because the thing there is, for marriage, I don't think anybody can stop another person from getting married. But on the corresponding regulation, the inmates could only correspond with close family members who are in different facilities, different institutions within the state. So the court in deciding this case, and you know the Turner case is a very, very, very important case. It's a very, very important case. So when you're reading cases as it relates to prison prisoners' right, and smooth running of prison institutions, there will not be many cases without the Turner's standard. So for the class action lawsuit that the inmates brought, they argue that the corresponding regulation violated the First Amendment, which has to do with First Amendment, which has to do with freedom of speech and religion and other stuff like that. They also argue that it's violated the Eighth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. So there were the three issues or three violations that the inmates contended that prison authority violated. So you see, if you read prison law, as I would call it, you see most of the cases are brought because inmates feel that some, amendment, the First Amendment right was violated, the Eighth Amendment right was violated, the 14th Amendment. These are the amendments that the inmates bring cases on, or some of them bring cases maybe with in federal court. They bring cases on 1983. We say people who are acting on color of state law that violate another person's constitutional right will be held liable in the court of law. So it's very important that correctional officers know, what these different, what are the issues raised in different cases. And the reason I decided to discuss cases and then connect it with our policies or our regulations, stuff like this, because cases give you a broader insight about the law, what the court said, and once you can read these cases, you have a very good insight over the little nuggets of law or policies that you need to follow so that you be in the right position. You're not getting yourself jammed up when something goes wrong. Like we talked about Joseph versus Glick last week, and the other case we talked about Woodley versus Alberts last week. So if you read those cases that we talked about last week, you'll see that those cases give you a better insight as to how, when to use force. One of the cases that Abbas was shot and survived during prison riot. Excessive force was used, but Whitley was not found guilty because the force was used to restore order. It was not used maliciously or sadistically to cause harm. But in the case of Johnson versus Clay, Officer Clay was found liable because there was minor injury to Johnson, but because the force was used not appropriately, Johnson was found liable. The point I'm trying to make is understanding regulation and tying it up with cases will better help you understand how to handle situations. Split-second decisions are always are being good. So the court decided, the prison officials argued that the court should not get involved in the running of institutions and stuff like that. They should leave prison. They should leave these kind of issues to prison management, and the restriction were reasonable given the potential security risk. So they were arguing that, oh look, these policies or these regulations that were formulated were intended to maintain security, avoid potential security risk. But the courts in deciding this case, the court said that the marriage regulation was unconstitutional. The court said the marriage regulation was unconstitutional because marriage is, inmates have constitutional rights, and the constitutional right does not necessarily stop at the prison gates. They still have the constitutional rights, although these rights are to some extent restricted because people in jail, the same rights they have are not similar to those who are not in prison or jail. And so, but their rights still exist. So people have to be careful. Prison officials have to be very careful in how they make rules and regulations as it relates to the running of their institutions. The court, in deciding this case, that's why you always see, you always hear when you're reading cases, you always hear the Turner test. The court the court formulate or establish 4 tests. We're not going to talk about all today, but one of the tests that the court established, the court said that in writing or formulating any regulation, the prison have to ensure there's a valid connection between the regulation and the legitimate governmental interest. So you can't just write laws and write these policies or these regulations without establishing or clear or governmental interest that is at stake as a result of the violation or what this is intended to accomplish. You understand what I'm saying? So the court, one of the Turner tests is that there should be a valid, rational connection between the regulation and a legitimate governmental interest. You know what I mean? So the government can't just come out and say, the institution can't just come out and make laws. They got policy. They got to make policies that are related to a valid governmental interest. As I started this discussion, I said prison officials or prison inmates CEO will only come to the public, will make headlines when things go wrong. So whenever you find yourself in this kind of a situation, have to deal with inmates or writing laws and policy, prison officials have to be very, very careful and not to make laws that are going to infringe upon the constitutional rights of inmates. Because you can be sued for any violation. Although it's not easy to sue a correctional officer or prison official because you got to establish that the prison official was deliberately indifferent. They knew about the risk and they did not do anything about it. You got to be able to point out that there were not adequate training. All other things you got to be able to prove. If I say you now talking about inmates, I want to bring legal action. You got to also exhaust what we call in the grievance policy within the institution before you can go to taking your case to the next level. The second test in China was this, that alternative means should be available to inmates to exercise their right. You know what I mean? So if you write a regulation and the regulations are most of the regulations are intended to 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 implement or carry on safe running of the institution. Equally so, there had to be alternative for the inmates to be able to implement their rights. So the Supreme Court found out that said that that particular issue was the marriage regulation was wrong. It was wrong. But as it relates to the correspondent, we'll talk about that. But let's look at the third impact. There were four, but we'll just talk about three. Impact on not accommodating the right on prison resources and security. So, if at all, another thing to talk about is what they call legitimate penological interest. We'll talk about that one in another video. Legitimate penological interest is this particular rule or policy implemented or formulated to ensure the smooth running or functioning of the institution, to avoid security risk, to avoid harm, and also is it intended to stop or is it intended to harm the inmates. All of these calculations have to be brought into consideration before the prison can carry out a particular policy or regulation. Whatsoever regulation the prison officials come away, they have to ensure that that policy is logically related to a legitimate penological interest. Okay, we formulate this particular one so that we can ensure the smooth running of our institution. Folks, my name is Pico Conway, and you are watching What the Dust Settles. Today is our 5th episode, and we're talking about Turner versus Safley, okay. And this case happened in Moussiri in 1987, where Safley and other Moussiri inmates challenged prison regulation. One, a marriage, and the second one was on correspondence, between inmates in different facilities. So we talk about the court struck down in the 7-2 decision, right? The court struck down the prison regulation on marriage. But then on corresponding between inmates in different Moussiri prisons, the court said that the court upheld the regulation and said that inmates in different prisons could conspire together to, cause security problems in the different institutions. So the court upheld the regulation that was intended on restricting correspondence between different inmates in different facilities. So, folks, the tunnel. I intended to talk about tunnel because, as I already said, tunnel. You get the tunnel standard, because in many cases, in many cases, the tunnel standard is being used to uphold or strike down prison regulation. First of all, there got to be a legitimate penological interest. There got to be a valid and rational reason between the regulation and the alternative means for inmates to exercise their right. There are other cases, right? There are other cases that deal or that the court decided using Turner. And we'll discuss those cases later on. Folks, my name is Pico Conway, and today we're talking about Turner versus Safley, 482 U.S. 78, happened in 1987. This case is a landmark case. So if you have the time, man, try to read this case and come back and comment and tell me what you learned from the case and what are some of the things you think correctional officers need to be aware about. As correctional officers, I'm not trying to be a lawyer. I'm not, although I still want semester out of law school, at the Louis Alto Grad School of Law in Liberia, one of the oldest law schools in Africa. I don't pretend to be a lawyer, and reading these cases doesn't mean you want to be a lawyer. The inmates at my prison when I work, or most prisons, you'll see those inmates. I always say the inmates who don't give you trouble are the inmates who always reading the policy handbook and knowing whenever you do something wrong, they point it out to you. Like the inmate myself, one time I make a mistake, and the inmate was say, "No, can't wait. I think you get it wrong over here." That's not what the handbook says. So most of the time, I like to read the handbook, and I picked this book up. I hope you can see it. I pick up this book, and I make it my business of reading this book. If you read this book, you'll see a lot of cases in this book about how inmates brought different type of cases, and we talk about Turner versus Safley that we're discussing. And last week we talked about Johnson versus Glick, G-L-I-C-K. We talked about the case between Whitley and Abbott's. Inmates who don't give you trouble, trust me, they are always ready to know what the rights is. Whenever you do something wrong, they are able to point out those rights to you. They are the guys who always come to you and say, "Can I get a grievance?" So, as a correctional officer, you got to try to read your handbook. You got to try to read your policies. Don't just sign up. I sometimes do it though. I'm not going to lie over here. I sometimes just sign up for the policy in the past. But now almost every policy that is published, I try to read the policy. I might not get the whole thing, but I get a general idea of what to do or what not to do, or what the policy is asking us for. Like the use of force situation. If you're using force, you have to ensure that you're using force to restore order, not to harm. That's why we discussed in the last two cases. Force should be used to restore order, not to cause harm. It should not be used, the words that the court used, it should not be used sadistically or maliciously. But it should be used to restore order. That's the biggest thing. So if an inmate tries to do something to you, your force should not be to harm the inmate or put yourself in harm's way, but to restore order. I have a situation just 2-3 days, even yesterday I have a situation where, just to backtrack a little bit, we talk about corresponding, okay? When the inmate had a letter, he was sent it out, right? But then he didn't put his return, he didn't put his address and the return address on the envelope, right? So the mailroom sent back the letter to him with a postage, not postage, but not only the envelope telling him to put his address, his return address on it. So I think the shift before me that's supposed to give out the mail forgot to give it to him. But since I work in that area 5 days a week, I came in, I saw, I said, oh, this guy's supposed to get it. Look at that, oh, he's supposed to get it. So I called the guy, I said, look, man, come on and get your mail. There's the note to put on it, the notepad to put on it, telling you to go. So when I wanted the pad to do a check, because where I work, you gotta do check. Every 30 minutes, you gotta go do check. Every institution different, but most institutions have to, most correctional officers have to do checks maybe within 30 minutes. It depends, but I'm an institution. We do checks every 30 minutes. So when I wanted the pad, came out of the mind, wanted the pad. The guy said, he stepped to me and said, oh, why you guys just giving this back to me? I sent it 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago. I'm not exactly sure. So I said, I was not here. You know, we don't give out the mail. The 8 to 4 doesn't give out mail. The 8 to 4 shift doesn't give out the mail. The 12 to 8 shift, the 4 to 12 shift does give out the mail to you guys. So apparently they give it out, you and I here, or maybe the person who give it out didn't know that they're supposed to give it. They didn't read this thing. So I just found it here. And being the Friday officer, I intended to give it to you so that you can do what it said. Give it to the 4 to 12 officer. They will put it in the mail bag and you let them go out. So saying that, I think I smiled or something. He stepped to me, narrowed the gap between the both of us so close to me. I'm talking about using the force, right? So close, right in my face. It stepped to me. So when you laugh, it's funny thing. So I said to him, step back, and I took put my hand on my cigarette. So step back, and I raised my voice to him. I told him to go lock in. The point is, you gotta first, and I also step back 2-3 steps to make sure that I'm in a safe in a position so that when he intended to strike me, I will be able to maybe get away. The point I'm trying to make here is we as correctional officers, we are always faced with a use of force situation. Split second. I was going out there, giving the guys know, there was the instruction on it, what to do. I didn't think that was going to agitate the guy for him to do what he did. But that's the kind of a situation we find ourselves in all the time in correctional institution. And you have to be able to de-escalate first of all. You have to use your interpersonal communication skills to be able to diffuse situations so that it doesn't escalate. So after the Turner decision, there were many cases that came about. Like there was a case where the Muslim inmates were denied going to Jumu'ah services because they were assigned a kitchen, and these inmates sued the institution because they said it was a violation of their First Amendment right. But the court upheld the regulation because they said it was intended, it was logically, it was related to legitimate penological interest, because those working in the kitchen, they got to serve food. When they don't serve food, the inmates will be hungry. When the inmates get hungry, there will be a chaos. When there are chaos, people go to get hurt. I'm just saying, but what I'm saying is the regulations and the regulation of prison authorities, formulate or establish, it got to be related to a logical, penological interest. Folks, once again, my name is Pico Conway, and today we're talking about the case of Turner versus Safley, 482 U.S. 78. It happened in 1987 in Missouri, where the guys brought a class action lawsuit against prison authorities in the state, arguing that marriage regulation was unconstitutional, which of course the court said was unconstitutional, and then they also corresponded between corresponding regulations that was, banning inmates from different facilities from communicating between themselves. So, folks, this is for today. And as I started this thing, I said that we as correctional institution will come on the spotlight when when things go wrong. Most of the time, when things go wrong, Everybody wants to know. Now we have this situation in Louisiana where 10 prisoner escape. That's the headline. So you have to be very mindful of what you're doing and how you do what you do, because our job is a very dangerous job. And with one inmate escape, is everybody is like wanting to know what went wrong, and they want to see who was responsible, and you name the rest. So it's very good that you, as a correctional officer, you be mindful of your surrounding. Make sure you read your policies, read your inmate handbook, know your do's and don'ts, read cases, not just policy, read cases. And most of the policy, when you see the policy, you see the law of your state under there that authorizes your institution or your department to do what they do. Read also those. I just got in the habit, if I see Delaware, Delaware chapter 11 or 29, stuff like that, under the policy, I try to read it and say, what authority does this institution have to formulate this policy? And you always see it. I'm not going to other people's place to see it, but I guess it's the same thing, because you must have the authority, the statute or the constitution of your state to dedicate that power to your facility to safeguard or to manage inmates before they can start writing all these policies and the rules or the regulations. So instead of why it's good that you should read the policies that has been written by your institution, it's also good that you read the laws granting your institution that authority to do what they're doing. Folks, my name is Pico Conway, and today you're watching When the Dust Settles. We are talking about Turner versus Safley, 482 U.S. 78. And the case was a class action lawsuit brought by Safley and other Missouri inmates for two regulations that were formulated by, or that was written by Missouri Prison System or Authority. Those were the superintendent has to approve your marriage, and the correspondence was banned amongst inmates from different Missouri prisons. One of the regulation was struck down by the Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision in 1987, and the other regulation was upheld. That is corresponding between inmates from different Missouri prisons were not allowed to communicate among themselves, because the court said those inmates could conspire to do something to cause unrest within the prison system. So that particular regulation was upheld, but the regulation on prison on marriage was deemed unconstitutional. And they also established the Turner test. There can be a valid and rational relationship between the policy and governmental interest. They talk about you got to make sure there's not a strain on the facilities, financing, and stuff like that. So I encourage you to read cases, not just the policy. I encourage you to read cases. I also encourage you to read the laws that grant your institution the authority to write the rules, to write the policy and regulations. Until next week, folks, have a great day. I will talk to you when I talk to you. Before I end, I just want to say this that last week I went to a graduation with my wife, and we had the opportunity to see the city mayor of Philadelphia. No, I'm not in Philadelphia, but I'm close to Philly. It's one of the biggest cities near us, so most of the time we go to Philly. So we also have interest, or I also have interest in things happening in Philly. And I was at this graduation ceremony, and Sherelle Parker was the guest speaker, and she made a very important speech, And one of the points that she made was, when we see people, we see successful people, we just think that success just, come from out of the blue, you know what I mean? We all get hooked to this fake stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and you see successful people, you get think that She talked about her upbringing and how difficult it was for her, and how her parents had to work 2 jobs, and how she also had to struggle to go to school and be to what she is today. The point I got her from that is, it just what we do this time, most of us, instant success. Everybody wants instant success. But anybody that tells you that, they just lying to you. Most successful people, like Elon Musk, LeBron James in basketball, or the young guys that are playing basketball, like you have men like Anthony, what's his name? Anthony Edwards, LeBron James in basketball, even Lionel Messi in soccer, and other things you can think about. These successful people, it doesn't just happen. They don't just post things on Facebook and you see them and just think, no. If you see LeBron James playing basketball, and sometimes he get the ball, people say, shoot, shoot, shoot. You forgot to know LeBron James being in the gym for hours. Or he been training with his teammate. All the skills those guys, all the things those guys are doing on the basketball court, are things they've been learning for months. They've been perfecting the skills. I'm talking about what Parker said, and I'm also talking about these successful people, but I want to bring it back to us as correctional officers. Know your policy, read it, let it be second nature. Live it, breathe it, so that if you're doing anything, you're not afraid of anybody. You're not afraid of your supervisor. You are there to help make their work easy. If they try to do something that you think is wrong, oh no, sir, you think we need to do it this way because give them ideas, because trust me, these guys, the supervisors, are busy too, you know what I mean? So, Sherelle Packer, Sherelle Packer advice to the young graduates was very important. Successful people had a lot of mistakes, doing in their journey, or doing their journey to where they are. Read about a successful person. They'll tell you how they feel. And Steve Jobs was dismissed for his job. Lionel Messi, to say he had a lot of medical problems when he was growing up. But yet instead, he stick to his craft. One of the greatest basketball players. Cristiano Ronaldo says he hours training, perfecting his skills. So let's look at our job the same way. Like these athletes, they practice their skill. Let's read our policies. Reading your policies and reading cases will not make you to be a lawyer, or make you to know what the law says. And trust me, when you know what the law says, when you know the policy, people say you are slow, but you always try to do the right thing. As the way I try to read this policy, as a first year law student, somebody with this law for just one semester, and I try to go back and read the cases and stuff like that. I like to read law by reading cases. Even if I'm walking the road on the street, I try to walk, even when the crosswalk is far away from me, I try to get in the crosswalk and wait for the light to be green to pass. I'm always playing a lot of things in my head. If I'm crossing the street and this car knocked me down outside this crosswalk, I'm going to be irresponsible. I'm going to be wrong because I'm not in the designated area to cross the street. Folks, my name is Pico Conway. Maybe I try to deviate a little bit, but I just trying to tell you what I did last week. And in our case, it's Stoner versus Safley, and the case is about marriage regulation and corresponding amongst inmates in different various Moussiri prison. The court struck down the regulation for corresponding, but the court upheld the regulation on struck down the regulation on marriage, and upheld the regulation on corresponding. So folks, my advice is you keep reading. Please read this. Please watch my video. Watch our video. And don't forget to comment. Until next week, have a great day. Continue reading your policy. And if you have the time, read some of the cases as it relates to the policies that You are reading. Don't just sign on the line, the dotted line. Make sure you read it before you sign it, because if something goes wrong tomorrow, you go to hell. You're going to be held accountable for your actions. Until next week, have a great day. I will talk to you when I talk to you. Bye for now.